You know that feeling when you're just trying to get through your day, minding your own business, and some random person decides you're a prop in their universe. They look at you, but they don't see you. They see a minor obstacle, an inconvenience standing between them and what they feel they deserve. And you watch them, silently fuming, hoping that karma is real. Well, this is a story about the day I decided karma needed a little help. And all it cost me was $14 and a bag full of fried potatoes. If you've ever felt invisible, or been disrespected by someone who thinks they're above the rules, then this story is for you. It's about a simple act of justice that became the most satisfying revenge I've ever experienced. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and get ready, because this is the story of how a small bag of potato wedges became a battlefield for a man's pride and a woman's entitlement. It was a Saturday afternoon, one of those perfect, unremarkable days. The kind of day you don't think about until later, when it suddenly becomes the most memorable day of your week. The sky was that bright, cloudless blue you only see in late spring. I had a simple mission: get dinner. My wife had had a grueling week at work. Long hours, a tough project, and she was just exhausted. Her one request, the one thing she was really looking forward to, was something simple: potato wedges from our local grocery store deli. Now, you have to understand, these aren't just any potato wedges. They're the kind that are perfect in every way. The outside is a deep, burnished gold, crisp enough to give a satisfying crunch. The inside is soft and pillowy, just a touch of steam escaping when you bite into them. They're savory and salty, and they feel like a warm hug on a plate. This wasn't just a snack for my wife. It was a little moment of joy, a well-deserved reward for a week of quiet struggle. I pulled into the parking lot. The sun was still high, and a light breeze rustled the leaves on the trees. I grabbed a cart and walked inside. The automatic doors slid open with a soft sigh, and I was immediately hit by the familiar medley of scents that make up a grocery store. The sweet smell of fresh-baked bread, the meaty aroma from the hot food bar, and that clean, slightly sterile scent of the produce section. I made my way through the bright, fluorescent lit aisles, my mind already on the evening ahead, anticipating the quiet piece of dinner with my wife. I got to the deli, and it was a typical scene. A low hum of conversation, the quiet rattle of plastic containers, the sharp snick of the slicer, and the gentle clatter of serving spoons against metal trays. The line wasn't long, maybe 4 or 5 people deep. I took my place at the very end. I was the last person, perfectly content to wait my turn. I pulled my phone out, ready to scroll through some mindless social media while I waited. And that's when she entered the picture. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. She walked with a certain swagger, a little too fast, a little too confident, like she was on a mission. And she wasn't alone. With her was a young girl, probably a preteen. The girl was holding a basket and had a slightly slumped posture, her eyes cast down toward the floor. They weren't just here to get food. They were a storm front, and they were about to bring a lot of trouble to a very peaceful deli line. They didn't join the line behind me. They didn't even look for the end. They just stopped about 15 feet from the counter, in a little bubble of their own. She kept her eyes on the deli counter, her body language radiating a mix of impatience and entitlement. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she just needed to get her bearings. But a few seconds later, As the first person was served, I saw her start to move. The first customer finished their order and stepped away. The deli worker, a patient-looking man with kind eyes and a name tag that read Mark, looked up. "Who's next?" he said, his voice a calm, practiced monotone. That's when she made her move. She took a swift step forward, her hand already out, like she was claiming her prize. But Mark, without missing a beat, looked right past her to the person who was actually next in line. "Ma'am, the line is over here," he said, gesturing vaguely in my direction. Her hand dropped. Her face tightened for a split second, a flash of pure annoyance. She just gave a sharp huff of air and retreated to her little waiting area. The young girl with her didn't even look up. I saw the silent exasperation on Mark's face and the shared look of "Can you believe this?" that passed between the rest of us in line. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate act of contempt for the system, for the social contract that we all agreed to when we walk into a store. It was the belief that her time, her needs, were simply more important than ours. The next person was served. And wouldn't you know it, she tried it again. Another step forward, another attempt to swoop in and steal a spot that wasn't hers. This time, Mark's voice was a little more firm. "Ma'am, you have to wait your turn. There's a line." She shot him a dirty look, her mouth a tight line of frustration, and she stepped back again. The quiet impatience of the deli counter was slowly starting to curdle into a low-grade tension. By the time the third person finished their order, I was third in line. My own patience was starting to wear thin. I could feel a low thrum of irritation buzzing in my veins. My jaw was just a little tighter, my shoulders just a little more rigid. I was no longer a casual observer. I was now a part of this unfolding drama. My body was telling me what my mind was already processing. This person was the worst. I watched the person in front of me get their order. They were getting some sliced ham, and I could hear the rhythmic whir and snick of the machine. As the deli worker carefully packaged their order, I heard her speak again, this time a venomous whisper to the little girl beside her. "This is ****ing ridiculous. I just want some wedges." That was the line, the final straw. My blood went cold, then hot. It wasn't just her impatience that set me off. It was the casual entitlement, the total lack of self-awareness. She was acting as if she was a victim, a poor, wronged soul who just wanted a snack. But all she had to do was walk 10 feet and wait her turn, like the rest of us. Her words, "I just want some wedges," were a statement of her worldview. Her desire for something simple was more important than the rules, more important than anyone else's time. And in that moment, she sealed her fate. She wanted the wedges. Oh, I was going to make sure she never forgot the day she wanted the wedges. The man in front of me stepped away from the counter, his bag of ham in hand. The path was open. I took a step forward. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. She was already moving, like a coiled snake, ready to strike. I met her at the counter. She was so close to reaching it, her arm extended, her mouth already open to speak, and I beat her to it. I stepped fully in front of her, planting my feet on the linoleum, a silent wall. Then I spoke, my voice calm but with a deliberate firmness. "The end of the line is behind me." She stopped dead. Her face, a moment ago filled with a predatory smirk, twisted into a look of absolute shock. She looked at me, her eyes wide, then at Mark. the deli worker, who just stood there, watching the scene unfold with a weary curiosity. She looked back at me, her expression turning from shock to fury. "This is bullshit," she shrieked, her voice high and piercing. "It's first come, first served." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. The irony of her statement, after trying to cut in 4 times, was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mark didn't say anything either. He just held her gaze. The silence stretched between us, a powerful force. Her face was turning a deep crimson, and her jaw was clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. She was humiliated, defeated, and it was all on display for the rest of the deli to see. Finally, with a sharp huff, she turned on her heel and retreated to her corner, defeated. I turned my full attention to Mark. He was my co-conspirator now, whether he knew it or not. He gave me a knowing look, a subtle nod of respect for the small battle I had just won. "What can I get for you?" he asked, his voice low. I looked into the glass case. I saw the potato wedges, the golden, crispy nuggets of deliciousness. But there weren't many. Maybe enough for one small portion. Enough for her. My mind, which had been so focused on stopping her, was now focused on a different, more satisfying revenge. I knew she was watching me. I could feel her eyes on my back, burning. She was waiting, her gaze fixed on the last few wedges, her singular, desperate goal. I looked at the scant pile and then back at Mark. I leaned in and spoke in a low voice. "I need more than what's available," I said. He glanced at the tray of wedges, then back at me, a question in his eyes. "I can drop another batch," he said, his voice a little louder for her benefit. "It'll be a 5, maybe 10-minute wait." This was it. The moment the plan truly came together. The perfect, unexpected move. I had her. She was trapped. "Sounds good," I said, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "And you know what? Since you're dropping more, why don't you help her while you wait?" I gestured with my head to the corner where she was stewing. Mark's eyes widened a fraction. He got it. He knew what I was doing. He was in on the game. I saw her perk up. Her head shot up, her eyes wide with a mix of suspicion and hope. This was a gift, a second chance. She didn't hesitate. She strode up to the counter, her expression a mix of triumph and seething anger. She had won, sort of. She was getting what she wanted, but she still had to wait, and she still had to do it on my terms. I heard her grumbling to Mark as he got her something else. "Fine, might as well, at this point," she muttered, but her voice was laced with a venomous frustration. She wasn't happy. She was just resigned. She was here. She had waited, and now she was committed. She couldn't just leave. She had to stay. She was a fish on the line, and I was just enjoying the fight. The minutes ticked by. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. 10 minutes felt like an hour. I stood there, leaning on my cart, watching the steam rise from the hot food trays. I could hear the fryer sizzle in the back, the air filled with the delicious, familiar smell of frying potatoes. It was an olfactory taunt, a delicious torture for the woman in her irritation area. I could feel her eyes on me, on the counter, on the fryer, a singular, obsessive focus. She wasn't thinking about anything else. She was just waiting for her potato wedges. I saw Mark pull a huge, golden basket out of the fryer. The potatoes were glistening, perfectly seasoned, and absolutely beautiful. He carefully poured them into the glass display case, a small mountain of golden brown perfection. They were so hot they were practically radiating heat, sending little wisps of steam up into the fluorescent light. This was her moment, her prize. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. Her body was tense, ready to spring forward. She was ready to take her revenge by finally getting her wedges. But I was still here. Mark looked at me, a silent signal passing between us. "They're ready," he said. I stepped up to the counter, right in front of the mountain of potatoes. I saw her take a step forward, a tiny little lunge, a final, desperate move. I looked back at her, a silent reminder. I was next. She stopped, her shoulders slumping. The game was over. I had won. Mark's face was a study in controlled amusement. "How much do you want?" he asked. His voice was a quiet whisper, now just for me. My heart was pounding in my chest. This was the moment, the culmination of the entire ordeal, the reason for the wait, for the frustration, for the humiliation. I looked him straight in the eyes, and in the quietest, most powerful voice I could muster, I said, "I want all of them." He paused, just for a second. The corners of his mouth twitched. "All of them?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "All of them." His smile broke through. It was a genuine, full-toothed grin, a sign of mutual understanding, of a shared moment of beautiful, perfect justice. He grabbed the largest container he had, a cardboard box big enough for a family of 4, and he reached for the serving spoon. He was moving now with a certain grace and purpose, like he was doing something more important than just serving food. Scoop after scoop, he piled the potatoes into my container. The beautiful, golden pile grew higher and higher, the entire fresh batch. For me, the container was heavy, overflowing with the spoils of victory. He placed it on the scale. The number on the screen climbed and climbed. The final total was around $14. I pulled out my card and paid without a single moment of hesitation. It was the best $14 I had ever spent in my life. I picked up the massive box of potatoes. It was warm and heavy in my arms, and it felt like I was carrying a trophy. And I turned around, slowly. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. She was staring into the empty deli case, the space where the potato wedges had been, the space that was now just a lonely, empty metal tray. She squinted, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. She leaned in closer, a hand on the glass. She looked at the empty tray, then at Mark. And then her eyes landed on me. Her gaze started at my face, a look of pure confusion. Then her eyes drifted down to the massive box of potatoes I was holding, the box that was still steaming, filled to the brim with her singular desire. And that's when the scream came. He did what? It was a sharp, high-pitched shriek that echoed off the high ceilings of the grocery store. Her head whipped back around to Mark, her face contorted with shock and fury. She was a woman, completely unhinged. She looked at Mark, then at me, then at the empty deli counter, unable to process what had just happened. Her entire existence, for the last 10 minutes, had been consumed by the promise of those potato wedges, and in a single, silent moment, that promise was obliterated. I had taken them all. Every single one. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. The look on her face, the sound of her voice, was more satisfying than any victory celebration. I just turned and walked away, slowly. I didn't look back. I knew what she was doing. I knew she was still standing there, screaming internally, defeated by a man she had considered an obstacle, a man who had now become her personal boogeyman. I walked through the aisles, the shopping cart making a quiet rumble as I went. I passed other shoppers who gave me quizzical looks, but I didn't care. The revenge was complete. The justice was served. I got to the car, and the cool air felt wonderful against my cheeks. I placed the massive box of potatoes in the passenger seat and sat down in the driver's seat. I just sat there for a minute, the silence of the car a welcome relief. It was a stupid, petty thing, a battle over a bag of fried potatoes. But it wasn't really about the potatoes, was it? It was about respect. It was about seeing someone try to steamroll their way through the world without any consideration for anyone else. It was about a small act of standing up for what was right, for a simple, everyday act of justice. I drove home, a peaceful smile on my face. When I walked through the door, my wife saw the massive box I was carrying and her eyes widened. "Did you get enough?" she asked, a laugh in her voice. I just smiled and set the box down on the counter. "Baby," I said, "I got them all." And I told her the whole story. The long line, the entitled woman, the repeated attempts to cut in, the quiet confrontation, and the glorious, silent revenge. She just laughed. She laughed so hard she had to hold on to the counter. And as we sat there, sharing that mountain of potato wedges, every single bite tasted sweeter, more satisfying than any food I've ever had. And that's the story. A simple Saturday afternoon that became an epic tale of petty revenge. It just goes to show you that sometimes the most powerful form of justice isn't a grand gesture, but a quiet, methodical, and deeply satisfying act of defiance. If this story gave you that little thrill of satisfaction, hit that like button and tell me in the comments below, what's the most satisfying small-scale revenge you've ever witnessed or carried out? And of course, subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for listening.